Alright, welcome back to Hexcells. We are starting the last world, World 6, and this is going to take all of the information that we've gathered before, all of the mechanics that we've taken before, and just throw them all together for really some challenging levels. So let's dig right in. We have a 0, a couple more zeros, we have a 2. That forces this column. We have a 2 with dashes. This 2 is already adjacent. This 4. And then either of these two for this 2. But there are 2 in this diagonal, and only one of these. I'm not doing a very good job of explaining. We know that one of these two, and exactly one of these two, is blue because of this 2. It's already adjacent to this 1 blue. So one of these hexes, and only one of these hexes, is blue. There are 2 blue hexes in this diagonal, so this one must be to be the second blue. This column is a 1, so these are all marked off for free. And this 3 forces here. This is a column of 4. We have 2 already, so we need 2 more. Because of these 1s, the only configuration that works out are those 2. Otherwise, one of them would be adjacent to 2. This 2 is adjacent. Let's go back in from the inside. So this 1 forces here, and this one forces here. We know that exactly one of these two, just like up here, exactly, well, no, I take that back because it could be this one. We know that it has to be at least one of these two because this is a diagonal of 3. We already have 1, so 2 of these 3 are blue. But we know that it can't be both of these. So we know that 2 of these 3 are blue, but it can't be both of these, so we know that this one is blue. That tells us that one of these 2 is blue. Because this is a diagonal of 3, we already have 2, so one of these 2 is blue. So because exactly one of these 2 is blue, and this 2 is already adjacent to this 1, it will be adjacent to 2 when one of these hexes is blue. Therefore, it will be adjacent, and it can't be the case that this hex here is blue. That tells us that because of this 2 with dashes, this is forced. Now, this 2 is adjacent. It's adjacent here and here, so neither of these 2 are blue. That then tells us that this one is. This 3 forces here, and this column is wiped out. Now, this 1 tells us that one of these 2 is adjacent, but only one. Since this is a 2 connected diagonal, we know that it can't be the fact that, or can't be the case that this hex is blue, because then this 2 in curly braces would force this hex to be blue also, but then this hex would be adjacent to 2 instead of 1. So it can't be the case that this hex is blue, and therefore it must be the case that this hex and this hex are blue, and that diagonal is completed. Alright. Now, this diagonal here is a long one, but it has 4 blue hexes already out of 4. So we know that none of these hexes are blue, and that diagonal is done. This 2 forces these, and we know that this 3 is either these 3 or these 3, but it can't include this hex here. Then this 3 forces, this 3 is adjacent, this 2 forces, this 3 forces, and this 2 is adjacent. This column here already has its 2 blues, so these are all forced black. That column is done. And now, of these 4, we know that exactly one of them is blue. Exactly 1 hex is blue, because this column has 2 blue hexes. We already have 1 completed. Similarly, this column of 3 blues already has 2, so we know that 1 of these 3 is blue. So we know that 1 of these and 1 of these is blue. Okay? So if we look at this 2, we know that at most 1 of these 2 is blue. As it turns out, exactly 1 of them is blue, but at most 1 of them is. So that forces this hex to be blue, because it can't be both of them due to this column. Okay? The same principle exactly works here with one minor variation that we need to consider. So, one of these 2 can be blue, except this extra hex is here now. There wasn't a similar hex here. So it could be the case that one of these hexes is blue, and then this 2 would be adjacent. It would be adjacent to one of these 2 and this hex. Or it could be the case that this is the blue hex, meaning this hex is black, and this hex is black, and this hex is black, but then this hex is blue. So this 2 would be adjacent to this blue hex and this blue hex. And that's absolutely something that's possible. And if we think through the possibilities, we know that one of these 2 is blue. That's forced. If we think about this hex being blue, then this 2 would already be adjacent. It would be adjacent to this blue hex and this blue hex, meaning that this hex and this hex both are black. That would force this 1 to make this hex blue. But the problem with that is that only one of these hexes is blue, and we initially went with the idea of this hex being blue. So then there would be 2 blue hexes. So it cannot be the case that this hex is blue. That means by necessity that this hex is blue. And now this 1 is adjacent. And let's look back at this 2. So this 2 forces this hex to be blue. Now this 1 is adjacent. This column now has 2 blue hexes and is done. And now if we look back at this column of 3, we found which 1 hex in this column was blue. And that's done. If we look at these numbers, we'll see that all 3 of these are supposed to be blue, but we can also tell that because we have 3 hexes remaining that are blue and 3 hexes remaining total, so all 3 of them are blue. Alright. Let's see here. This is a challenge. So we're going to start from this being a 6 with curly braces. So let's assume that it goes down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It would have to start with here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So this one would be blue if we try and make the connected pieces as low as possible. As low as possible. So anything higher than that would mean that it's more like it's required that this one is blue. If the lowest that it can be still requires this hex to be blue, then anything higher would also require it to be blue. So we know that that hex is blue. So it could be these 6, or it could be these 6, or it could be these 6, or something higher. We can't tell for sure yet. What we do know is that the highest it can go is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's the highest it can go. So we know that neither of these 2 can be included. We have a 2 with dashes. This 2 is adjacent. So now we've eliminated some of the higher pieces of a potential 6. So now these two are guaranteed because it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in all of those cases, all 4 of these are blue. Okay. We have our 1 for this column. We have a 0. This 2 forces. This one is adjacent. This 2 forces. This 2 here means it's either these two, or these two, or these two. However, we know it can't be these two, because if it's these two, then this one couldn't be blue, but the column is connected. So it can't be these two. So it's either these two or these two. In either case, this hex is blue, and that eliminates this hex from being able to be blue. This one forces, this one is adjacent, this one is adjacent. Alright. So now for this 2, it's adjacent to this hex, so either one of these 2 hexes is blue, but we're not sure which yet. What we do know, if we look up here, this 2 forces both of those. And now when we look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We've got our 6. This column is done. This column is also done. This one is adjacent. This one is adjacent. This 3 forces. This one is adjacent. This one is adjacent. And this 2 does not allow that hex to be blue. This 2 forces. This 3 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 forces. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 forces. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. We have a 0. This one is adjacent. This one forces. Now this column of 1 is complete. This one is adjacent. So it's this one. This one forces. This one is adjacent. This 4 forces all of these. This 2 forces. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 with dashes forces. This one is adjacent. So this 2 is adjacent to 1. So one of these hexes is adjacent. Or sorry, one of these 2 hexes is blue. Since one of these 2 hexes is blue, and this hex is blue, this 3 forces this hex to be blue. Now this 3 is adjacent. This 2 forces. This 1 forces. This column is now filled up on 3. This 3 forces. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 forces. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. This 1 is also adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 forces. This 2 is adjacent. We have a 0. This 2 with hyphens, with dashes, forces. This 2 is adjacent. This 3 forces. This 3 forces. This 2 forces. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 3 is adjacent, and this 2 forces. This 1 is adjacent, this 2 is, this 2 forces, this 1 is. Okay, this is a scenario that's interesting. So looking at this 2 with curly braces, it's either these 2 or these 2. So in either of those 2 cases, this hex is blue. And the same thing holds for this hex. Either these 2 are blue or these 2 are blue. So in either case, this hex is blue. But this column only has 2, so we're already full up. So that hex is not. That column's done. So going back to this curly brace 2, this one's forced, and so is this one. This 4 forces these. And now we have 2 hexes remaining and 2 blue hexes remaining. They take up the last ones. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and light all these up. I know exactly what I'm looking at first. Never mind, I know what I'm looking at second. What I'm looking at first is this 0. Okay. I'm looking at this 8 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I know that all of these are forced. Having a column or a diagonal with the same number as the number of hexes there are is just as free as a column of zeros. It just requires you to count a little bit. All right. One, 2, 3, 4 with 1 already. So if we start at the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's either these bottom 2 or these top 2 or the middle. Okay. We have 4 in a column or in a connected. Can't be these because they're not enough. 2. We have some zeros. All of the zeros. This 2. Yeah, but one column or one diagonal. Some more zeros. One, 2, 3. One of these 2 hexes is blue. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Even though it's not complete, I'm gonna try and reduce clutter. We already know that one of these 2 is blue because of this 1. One of these 2 hexes is blue because of this one. So by having this up, we're representing the same thing twice. So I'm just going to reduce the clutter there a bit. Okay, we figured that out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have our 4 here. We have some zeros. 1, 2, 3. One, two, three, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's done, that's done. That's done. So one of these 2 hexes is blue. 2 of these 3 hexes are blue. And 2 of these 3 hexes are blue. One of these 2, 2 of these 3, and 2 of these 3. What am I missing? Two of these 3, 2 of these 3. But how do we know which 2? Like, once we figure out one of these, that should lead us to the answer, but let's see. I'm missing something. Oh, that's what I'm missing. There are already 4 here. I was not seeing this one down here for some reason. Okay, so there are 4 remaining and 4 hexes remaining. Oh boy. This is a doozy. Oh, I forgot that they had some... The diagonals going upward is pretty rare. They don't do that very often. It's been a while since I've seen that. Okay. Neither of those 2 allow for a 3 connected. Okay, so we have this section completed. We have another 0 here. One that's adjacent. Two that's forced, a 3 that's adjacent, and then a 2 that's adjacent. Forces, 1's adjacent. 3 forces, 2's adjacent. 3 forces. One, two, three, 4. That's done. This 2 dashes forces here. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. This 3 dash forces here. This 3 is adjacent. And this 3 forces here. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 4 forces. This 2 forces. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 forces that to be black. This 1 is adjacent. This 2 now forces. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the 5th for this diagonal. This 1 is adjacent. We have a 0. This 1 forces. This 1 is adjacent. This 1 forces. This 2 dash forces like that. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. This 1 is adjacent. These are forced and this diagonal's done. We know that one of these two is blue because of this column, so neither of these can be. This 4 forces, this 1 is adjacent. That solves that. This 1 is adjacent. This 3 forces these. This 2 is now adjacent. This 3 forces. Great, so we've got both of these big blobs done. We just have these 2 blobs here, and then like the outer nubs, whatever you want to call them. This 2 is adjacent. This 1 and this 1 is adjacent. Okay. That column is done. This diagonal is done. Those are both forced. And now this column is done. This 2 forces, this 2 is adjacent, this 2 forces, this 3 forces, this 2 forces, this 2 is adjacent, this 1 is adjacent, this 2 is adjacent, this 1 is adjacent, this 2 is adjacent. So this is all done. 1, 2, 3. This is forced, and that column is now done. This 2 with dashes forces there, and now this 5 forces all of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now these are both black. Sweet, so now we just need to get these outer nubs completed, and then we're done. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one is now adjacent. This one is forced. This 2 is adjacent. This 4 forces. This 3 is adjacent. This 5 forces. One tool that I use for playing this game is look for an adjacency or a column or a diagonal that has exactly one hex missing from it, because you'll always be able to solve for that if you have the number for it. So this diagonal here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 question mark, 5 actually, 6. So this one can't be blue because we already have the 6. This 3 forces. So in that situation there were actually 6, so we knew that that one was black. If it were 5 that we had counted, then we knew that this one would have to be blue. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 2 of these are blue. That doesn't tell me anything. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Doesn't tell me anything. About this 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. We have a 0. And another, and another, and another one, and another one. Alright, making progress. If we look down here, we know that that's forced. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This one's adjacent. This 4 is forced. That's forced. 3, 4, 5, 6. These 2 forced. That 4 is adjacent. This 5 forces. That's done. This column's done. This 1 is forced. This 2 is forced. This 1 is adjacent. That's all forced from the 2 dash. So here's another case where there's 1 in a diagonal that's missing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and there are 7. So we know that this one is blue. This 3 is now adjacent. This 4 forces. This 3 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 2 is adjacent. This 1's adjacent. This 2 is forced. That diagonal is done. This column is done. Boom. Alright, we are going into the final level. Prepare yourself. There are 57 remaining. If we count them up, there are 57 blues. And everybody, we have finished the game of Hexcells. %. This was our save file here. 100%. So thank you for joining. I hope you enjoyed. I will be making a series of videos for Hexcells Plus next, so you can look forward to that. And then when I'm done with that, I will have a playlist for Hexcells Infinite. So thank you again for joining. I hope you enjoy the game. This is Hexcells. You can find it on Steam. It's very cheap and a really good game. I highly recommend it. So thank you everybody, and goodbye.